Hello, Internet friends, and welcome back to Love-Hate Relationship, an opinionated podcast for opinionated people. I'm Andy Boel.
And I'm Alex Ruiz, and as always, we are here to brighten your day, anger your soul, and tell you how to live your lives in that order. And Andy, you told me that you were going to pull some weight and, get a preamble going, you used the word preamble, so, I'm all chin, hands, and ears. Please hit me.
Yeah, and I figured this time I'd, let you know before we were recording. No, I just have a quick question for you, my dear boy. Have you actually watched any of the Disney live action movies?
I watched live action Beauty and the Beast. It was fine.
Okay.
I have not seen Jungle Book. I have not seen Aladdin. I have not seen Lion King. Have there been any others?
Yes, and this kind of leads into my little point, and we've talked about this extensively. The reason I bring it up is it was soft released today that Hercules is getting its live action remake. To answer your specific question, you missed Lady and the Tramp, which came out exclusively on Disney Plus. And kind of to the point I wanted to make on the top here, we've gone through the paces on this phenomena of a Disney live action remake movie a couple of times now, and I've seen all of them except Dumbo and the Lady and the Tramp. And on the other side, looking back, I was so disgusted by the practice, and I'm not sitting here being like I've seen the light and changing my tune. I'm sitting here and being like, none of these have been culturally significant or even memorable or arguably that good. I'd argue the best one is Jungle Book, and I place a lot of that on Jon Favreau. But just here we are still trotting out the same practices, because whether they're good or not, and whether anybody gives two rips about them by the time they hit home video, they're still making money.
I was about to say, tell me the worst one, in your opinion.
The worst one, the biggest piece of shit one was Aladdin. Aladdin was a travesty. Yes.
That you saw.
Yes.
You saw that one?
Yes.
Okay, because I think I remember you saying you didn't want to.
I did not want to. I was coerced by people who are dear to me, and I sat through it, and then I got into a fight with my friend about how it is an objectively bad thing to exist. Okay,
so before it hits home video, before it hits streamers, before it does anything, it had a budget of $183 million. So let's go ahead and just, let's round up and double it. Let's say it was a $400 million budget. Do you know how much money it made?
Oh, closer to $1 billion than not.
1.051 billion. So even rounding up and doubling the budget for marketing, it still made more than double what they spent on it.
Sure.
It was, flatly speaking, a good investment. I'm telling you, man.
You think Bob Iger's kids like their mountain fortress?
I mean, if you had a mountain fortress, would you like it?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Bob Iger's family, but I like to think that his kids are just like, you know what, Dad? I don't wanna. I'm gonna be a kindergarten teacher, or I wanna be an accountant.
God, I hope so. Last thing we need is a couple of more entitled movie producers. Bob Iger is teaching one of those master classes that are cropping up out of the woodwork, and I want to say it's about business management or something, and I can't remember the direct quote, but in his stinger sentence to get you listening through the YouTube ad, he does say something about his children. So
I am not going to lie to you, Andy. I have never had any intention of doing any of those master classes. That said, I have watched the full 2-minute stinger commercial for the Tom Morello guitar one.
Of course you have.
More than once. Because here's the thing. I actually respect Tom Morello, like, not just as a guitarist, but, like, as a human being.
Sure.
Which I can't say for many famous people. But I legitimately respect Tom Morello. So the fact that he is doing one of these makes me kind of sit here and go, oh, this, like, they actually got somebody on this who I would legitimately, like, who I legitimately feel would care enough about it to do a good job, you know?
Yeah. You know Neil Gaiman's doing a creative writing one, right?
I have seen the beginnings of that preview, and in fairness, I can't sit through any more creative writing workshops because, like...
Because that's what you went to school for?
Yeah, once I spent 2 years and so many thousands of dollars that I'm still paying off to learn about creative writing from professional creative writers, I'm like, I'm good. But to spend like 17 hours learning guitar from Tom Morello.
Sure. I was going to say, I get it. Like the third one that came out, period, was Werner Herzog teaching filmmaking. And I was like interested enough to at least sign up with my email to find out how much that course cost. All I'll say about Masterclass right now is it's a tremendous scam. I wish I'd thought of it.
Say more about it being a tremendous scam.
Well, even if it's not necessarily a scam, just like... So you know, I went through the process of looking into what Werner Herzog's film class looked like, and it was something like a 12 or 14 week course, and it was all based around like, we're not going to put a cap on it, however many people are going to sign up, but then we'll tell you that like, okay, the big week 4 assignment is you write a pitch, and then Werner's going to read all the pitches. And that was the point when I was like, no, he's not. Some intern is going to read all the pitches, and then like, you're going to tell me Werner Herzog picked this guy's, and then Werner's going to talk about it. Maybe scam's the wrong word, but just like, these things started as sort of almost like the most low investment art class you could possibly take for the highest payoff. And they've just been sprouting like weeds to the point where we have Bob Iger's teaching a master class about like business administration. Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing one on like philosophy or something. That one astronaut who, like he's the guy who smoked weed on the International Space Station and took videos of what a tear looks like in space. He's doing one about being an astronaut. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, at this point, this is just like, you're paying for some interesting content that you have homework about. Like, no one is going to do the masterclass astronaut course and then go get a job with SpaceX. But I think enough people might pay money to have Neil Gaiman talk to them about creative writing for 14 weeks.
See, here's the thing. I didn't think they were live classes. I thought they were like recorded classes that you get access to.
They're recorded classes, but at least, and like I said, the only one I can really pull any experience from is the Herzog one, and that was like one of the first ones, at least I think it was. That was very much, it was pre-recorded, but like... the content was supposedly, especially late into the course, going to be based around actual submissions, which is why it's the whole thing of like, okay, for the week 12, like intensive, everybody shoots a scene, and then Werner's going to pick the best scene and he's going to dissect it and use that. And so it gives the appearance of being something that is truly interactive when, like, unless your content is what is selected, and I don't know enough about the process, maybe that really is how it goes, I'm just skeptical. Unless your content was the thing selected, you really don't know if it was, you know, all of this was done over the course of 2 weeks, and then they're just marketing this thing as a interactive live class when really it's not.
I don't know, because I mean, the way I think about it, okay, so you know this about me. I follow a lot of, like, what little amount of YouTube that I watch, a lot of what I'm watching are, like, musicians. Specifically, like, guitarists, bassists, things like that. There's a great channel called Music is Win. There's one called Bass Buzz where they do like bass lessons. There's a dude out in I think like Holland named Paul Davids who does these really, really like wonderful short guitar playing lessons and with like a little bit of theory to them. Like all great stuff, all stuff that I've used to improve my guitar playing. And it's all people who are doing like, here's our content that we do for free on YouTube. And in every single one of them, they have the click the link in my description to get my guitar playing course or to get my like, or to sign up for my bass playing course. And I've looked at those courses and they are all frankly just like, okay, here you pay this much a month and you get access to like, here's the jazz course where you can learn a bunch of jazz stuff. And here's the ear training course where we can show you these exercises. And all of these are people who they went to Berkeley or they went to like a conservatory of some kind. They've all done academic stuff. It's basically them taking all the shit that they learned in music school and dumbing it down. It's good content, and the monthly subscription is because they frankly do add shit to it on a regular basis. They're content creators, and this is just their niche. I never begrudge them that. I don't think it's a scam, especially because in a lot of their cases, they'll do thing where they're like, I'll do a weekly like hangout where I'll do a Q&A and I'll answer all your questions because you're paying me every single week. So of course I'm going to do that. I get it. That's just online education. The masterclass thing basically sounds like a way to go, okay, let's take people who are famous for this shit and have them just like, let's slap their names on it. Here's the thing. In my experience, just because someone's good at shit doesn't mean they're a good teacher.
Yeah.
They're just like, I mean, let me ask you, Andy, how many hockey players have good, like even great careers and then go on to be coaches?
Usually if they have a great career, then they are not coaches. It is how that tends to work out. Wayne Gretzky famously was a dog shit coach.
So there's a theory behind that, that the people who make the best players are the ones who have the most natural talent. And yes, they probably also work very, very hard to hone that talent, but they have a lot of natural talent. When you have a lot of natural talent, you're maybe not the best at explaining how shit works and theorizing the stuff because you're leaning so much on your talent. Whereas the ones who are kind of middle of the road as far as talent are concerned and need to work their ass off just to get really, really good or even up to that middle level become the experts, become the people who are so good at communicating this stuff and have learned the ins and outs of it. The best, I'll say this, the best weightlifting coaches, by and large, for the most part, I can think of a couple of exceptions, but most of the really, really great weightlifting coaches that I can name historically were maybe not dog shit weightlifters, but not particularly great. At best, they maybe got on a world team or went to an Olympics, but they didn't exactly medal in most cases. That's just not them. Yeah. Because the people who did that well were the ones who were naturally gifted and worked their asses off.
Yeah, and I totally subscribe to that notion. I mean, I'm looking at it. I looked it up just now. Masterclass is $90 a course, and then you like get to keep it. So what I pay, let's round up $100 to have Neil Gaiman or Margaret Atwood or David Mamet teach me script writing. Maybe, but I do contest, are these people actually doing it? And, you know, to your point earlier, like, once the course has run its natural course, then you're not getting live content. But you mentioned something earlier that I want to hone in on. You mentioned YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, let's get into our show.
A fine segue.
Thank you.
Bravo, my boy.
You teed it up so nicely. So yeah, welcome to Love-Hate Relationship. Every episode we talk about something we love, something we hate, and then we take your relationship questions and provide our perfectly unqualified advice. And as I've mentioned, YouTube, that's what we're going to be talking about today for my love, which is the YouTube channel / internet phenomenon Zero Punctuation.
Astronauts.
Yeah, which is something I hadn't thought about in a very long time, and I'm excited to talk about it.
And it's not your niche because it's a video game review video series, and you know you haven't been shy about the fact that you had a moment in your life where you kind of dropped off on video games, and I don't think anyone would begrudge you of that. But I was very excited when you said you knew about this, because I thought I was going to be having to really lead you on this one. But without any further ado, Zero Punctuation is a long-running series of comedic video game reviews created by Ben Yahtzee Croshaw. The series has run for the past 13 years, which makes me feel old because I think I've been watching since like the 7th episode. Mainly on the internet magazine site The Escapist, but also, as we pointed out in the segue, on YouTube. The videos are always around 6 minutes long and are these glorious, profanity-riddled, insult, hypercritical, drag through the mud experiences for whatever video game that Yahtzee is reviewing that week. And it's all spoken incredibly fast, hence Zero Punctuation. And you know, it's not just an audio delight. The visual style has really sort of cemented into its own. All of the videos are these yellow backgrounded, completely photoshopped cartoons where, you know, he has a character who is his avatar, and then he has all these little imp looking creatures that he will like put a clown nose on, or just, you know, alters it in whatever way and creates these really funny videos.
A lot of eye-stabbing animations, I tend to find.
A lot of eye-stabbing animations, a lot of talk of eye-stabbing, usually with a giant dick with a sandpaper condom, that sort of thing. Like this is not rated E for everyone at all. But, you know, while highly critical in most aspects of modern gaming, just one thing I really like about these videos is Yahtzee isn't above praising something if he genuinely enjoys it. He just holds like video game design to a incredibly high standard, which I would argue isn't a bad thing. But, you know, positive or negative, the result is always hilarious to me because of the quick wit, the lightning fast deliberately, and the shock humor. Because that's very much what it is.
Yeah. I watched, you sent me a few of these.
I did.
And, yeah, you sent me 3 that were all kind of from, one was recent, one was from like, I think 3 years ago. Another one was very recent, and it was like a look back on an entire company. And then one was an older review. And then I think I sent you the review that I had been familiar with, which we can talk about later, but I think that was an older one too. That was like 8 years old, I think. And it feels of that time of YouTube.
Yes. Yeah, very, very much. I mean, like I really didn't think about how this was a 13-year-old property until writing up my notes for this. And then I was like, oh, fuck me. Okay, I'm feeling my age now.
Sure.
But thinking back on it, like, yeah, I discovered this like sophomore year of high school, which, surprise, surprise, is closer to 15 years than not at this point. And it is very much of like, it was in the bubble. It came out at the right time. And more importantly, Yahtzee has been pumping these things out like every week for 13 years, give or take a occasional vacation, to the point where he's carved out his own little chunk of the internet to live on and be so recognizable that you, somebody out of the video game sphere, goes, oh, yeah, oh, shit, a buddy of mine sent me one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't stress this enough. Like, I looked in one of these videos that you sent me, and it popped up that YouTube playlist to the side, and it's straight up like 600 something videos.
I made a mental note in preparation. He has made 653 videos at time of recording, and you know, they're 6 minutes long, but they're 6 minutes that, you know, he has to write out a script for and deliver in this lightning fast way that I just can't imagine him getting it all done in one take, and then actually like creating these videos, and then on top of it actually playing these games.
I was gonna say, I have heard it said by more than one YouTuber that the good general formula is that for roughly every minute of content that you're seeing in a video, about an hour of work went into it.
Yeah.
So 6 hours a week before you count in how much time is actually spent playing the games, that's probably a part-time job. Straight up. Which, I mean, granted, if he's a YouTube creator and he's monetizing any of these videos, and or he's putting it through a magazine, maybe it is his job, but that doesn't change the fact that, holy shit, that is... I find that level of consistency just plain old impressive, because imagine doing anything every single week for 13 years.
Oh, absolutely.
And almost, like, the only thing I can think of with that kind of consistency is that some people go to church that frequently. And that's an hour a week.
I'm reminded of a Family Guy line about Jay Leno that I'm going to put in here about how
it is so fashionable to take a shot at Jay Leno. Look, the fact is the man is out there every bloody night with fresh material and is charming.
That's legitimate.
That's the thing I think about. And even then, like, talk show hosts like go season by season. So, you know,
they also have staffs.
They also have staffs. They also have writers. You know, as far as I know, this guy has been pretty much a one-man operation the entire time, and I have so much time and respect for that. You know, these are silly, funny videos, but at the same time, like, the dude is a legitimate video game journalist who makes salient points and has hard opinions, and, like, you know, he's not afraid to drag a company through the mud. One of the videos I showed you was for a game called Too Human, which has gone down as just being one of the worst video games ever made. Like, that is the general consensus. And yeah, another one was about Acclaim Entertainment, who are the guys who created the Turok games, and it was actually like this really interesting retrospective look at the fall of this company who made these insanely ludicrous and bad marketing decisions, like, you know, coming out with a fighting game and then telling people that if they paid to have somebody, a recently dead relative's casket decked out in this game, that they would pay for the funeral. Or the other one was like, if you name your baby Turok, we'll give you some money. Like, these absolutely insane decisions, but, like, that's not common knowledge. The guy had to, at the very least, like, spend some time digging into Acclaim Entertainment. So
yeah.
Let's all laugh at an industry that never learns anything. Tee-hee-hee.
I remember when I played video games, I was a subscriber to Game Informer. Like, I think every young male with a GameCube in the mid 2000s had a Game Informer subscription as well. But I remember reading, like, reviews on some of the Acclaim games that he was talking about. Specifically, like, I remember Turok Evolution. I had the old Turok game on the N64, and I never bothered beyond that because I didn't actually like that game that much. I inherited it. But I also remember he talks about BMX XXX, which is a Dave Mirra sequel, like a BMX game, but for some reason it just had a bunch of ass and titties in it. I remember reading a review for that in Game Informer that was like, this is a Dave Mirra sequel with a bunch of ass and titties, and it's a bad game, you guys. And Dave Mirra took his name off of it. And he references that in this fucking video, how Dave Mirra was like, Yeah, take my name off of that. Also, I'm going to sue your asses.
Right. He's got the line about how Acclaim kept Dave Mirra's face on the box but took his name off, and they thought that, maybe he'll just understand that we want to be friends. And Dave Mirra's heart grew 3 sizes that day. No, I'm just kidding. He sued their bollocks off. The video you showed me was his review of Resident Evil 5, and it all boils down to him talking about how Resident Evil 4 was this amazing, fantastic breath of fresh air into the Resident Evil series, and 5 was just literally
trash.
more of the same shit, only racist and bad. But he manages to throw in a David Bowie reference, and I'm reminded of why I do enjoy the comedy of Sam Kinison. Way back to our first episode, and we talked about that broken man. But I'm reminded of why I love his angry, shockingly mean humor. I'm also reminded of another internet video series by a company called Red Letter Media, in which this guy spends 3 hours eviscerating each of the Star Wars prequels. And when I say 3 hours, I mean per video. He spends longer than Star Wars Episode 1 talking about why Star Wars Episode 1 is an irredeemable piece of flaming garbage. I enjoy this sort of hyper mean comedy. That's just something that I really find incredibly funny, and I get. But there are a couple of things that set Zero Punctuation above for me, which is why I'm talking about it instead of those things. For one, we've just talked about how the man has consistently delivered every Wednesday for 13 years, give or take a vacation. And even then, beyond that, he's shown a level of emotional maturity that other video game journalists might not. I mean, without causing too many generalizations, video game journalism doesn't always sound like it's going to be the most tolerant or politically correct venue.
Andrew, are you telling me that video game journalists might lack respect for marginalized people?
Saying ain't so.
Oh, lordy, how will we survive?
But specifically, Yahtzee has kind of a sub-series. It's the same thing as that Acclaim Entertainment, where he looks back on something. And when that first came out, it was 2009. He did the first one, and he used the word retarded. And he would use the word retarded fairly frequently. It wasn't one of the opening tools in his tool belt, but it was a word he used several times. And to his credit,
he used it in the super old, in the Resident Evil 5 review that I sent you.
Exactly.
Which is 8 years old.
Yeah. And to the guy's credit, as the world has evolved past the use of that word being something that is acceptable as an insult, he very pointedly changed that in the graphic, and to the best of my knowledge, removed the word from his lexicon. Beyond that, there's another instance where he was caught under fire for a video that had a transphobic slur. And I was sitting here trying to think of what that could have been, so I looked into it, and he made a joke about how I'm not gay, I only suck off post-op transsexuals. And to the guy's credit, he came under fire and then wrote an article of apology within a week, addressing the comment, which is why I have it at the top of mind, and explaining the joke he was trying to make, and then owning up that it was incredibly lazy language on his part to go about it the way he did. Subsequently edited the video to remove it. Honestly, I think there's something to be said for that level of, yeah, I fucked up. I'm sorry I fucked up. Here's what I was going for. I totally missed the mark. I'm going to change this now. Especially for somebody who makes their bread and butter by being essentially a shock comic.
Yeah. I mean, it's... I'm not sure if this will still be topical when this episode comes out, which we're recording this at the tail end of April, the last day of April, actually. I think this episode's coming out like first week of June. So, hey guys, we're finally ahead. But I was reminded today that I was just listening to a news podcast, and they were talking about the Joe Biden sexual assault allegations. And in that, they went back to a previous Joe Biden apology for his kind of, not specifically the sexual assault, just kind of his inappropriate treatment of women. And he basically, like, his actual words, this is not in a statement like written by somebody else, these were his words that he said, like verbalized. He was like, I didn't mean to cause any harm for anyone. I am sorry, that was not my intentions. But he says, like, I am not sorry. As he said something about, like, I'm not sorry about my conduct insofar as my intentions were concerned. I'm sorry that I'm sorry that it happened, and I'm sorry that people were upset. And I'm like, this bitch touches on people and then says, I'm sorry it happened, and I'm sorry people were upset. Not, I'm sorry I inappropriately touched people. And I don't bring this up to, like, relitigate all the political topics we've been talking about. This is supposed to be a comedy podcast, y'all. But I bring this up basically just because that's not a real apology. That's an apology that certain shitty men in my family use because they don't want to admit that they're wrong. That, I'm sorry it happened. That wasn't my intention. It's bullshit. You own what you do. It sounds like this dude did that here. He said, I did a thing. Not saying I didn't. Here's what I was going for. I missed the mark. That was my bad. Let me fix it. That's a good apology.
Yeah.
That's a solid, I mean, to me, that's doing it right. And that deserves credit. In this media landscape, especially.
Absolutely. I wish I could be voting for him instead of Joe Biden, but what are you going to do?
He's Australian, so
I know.
What are you going to do?
Maybe I should just move to Australia. Anyway, no, I tremendously respect that technically Yahtzee Croshaw is a video game journalist. You know, these funny videos are critical reviews baked into a whole lot of comedy, but they are critical reviews. As somebody who isn't huge in the gaming landscape, but, you know, I like to keep up to speed, I'll happily sit down and watch an episode, especially if it's about a game that I am considering buying, before I will go to Game Informer, which I still have a subscription to in this day.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, Game Informer is a staple, dude. But I will watch Yahtzee's reviews before I will sit down and read the article and read the recommendation. And you know, I take the guy's praise very highly because he gives it out so infrequently, and for the most part, the things that he likes are the things that I wind up loving.
Sure.
You know, with the grain of salt that the guy makes his living by being a totally foul-mouthed, like, I mean, insult comic. I said it before. He's not for everybody. Hi, Mrs. Ruiz. I don't recommend you watch these videos. I'm very touched you asked about me. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too. But this isn't one you need to, like, see if this guy's comedy is for you. And even you, Alex, I know you're not like you aren't terribly invested in modern day video games. So, like, I kind of combed through his videos finding stuff that I thought you would be able to relate to. You know, the other video that I sent you was about Super Smash Bros.
Yeah, which is a game I love, like, unironically, because I used to play Super Smash Melee on GameCube, and I love that game.
Totally.
And it's a stupid game, but I love it.
Yeah. The guy's videos aren't for everybody, but they are very much for me. And I think if you are a listener who enjoys laughing at people being mean, at other people who are dumb, and if you like video games and you're unfamiliar with Zero Punctuation, I highly recommend it, at least to like give it a shot and decide for yourself if this is too vitriolic or not. Beyond that, Yahtzee has written several comedy books. They're all fiction. One of them is like a direct World of Warcraft ripoff, but the premise is basically, what if a video game character in World of Warcraft was alive and came to understand that they were a video game character? How insane would that make you? He's got another one, which is like this apocalypse in Australia, but the apocalypse is a 6-foot-tall layer of strawberry jam that eats people. All of his books that I've read have been absolutely delightful, and I'm really just happy to talk about somebody who took a talent, in this case writing, applied it to a passion, video games, and then took a shtick, talking so fast and being so mean, and created this thing for himself, because he very much has, his own little corner of the internet, and I love that.
Do you want to hear something totally unbelievable? Some people say they have difficulty telling whether I recommend a game or not. I know, what morons.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love, as someone who like a little bit wishes I could go back in time sometimes and I could repeat this with like music and just do like foul-mouthed reviews of music-related topics before Sideways made that a thing. Sideways is a wonderful YouTube channel where a foul-mouthed Irishman yells about music production software.
Oh, hell yeah.
Glorious. Actually, very similar comedic style to this, but without the animations. But no, I get it. That's a brilliant niche. I came across this. I didn't come across this Resident Evil review. It was sent to me by our dear friend Chris, with whom I have played Resident Evil 5. He knows that I was a huge fan of that franchise and that game was And I think he's a fan of this, or was, and he sent it to me years and years and years ago. So when I saw this animation, I went, I recognize this. This was that thing from Resident Evil 5 that Chris sent me forever ago. So, no, I appreciate you bringing this to the table. I think that the niches can get a little tricky sometimes, but you cover our video game base really, really nicely, and I think this was a cool idea. Talking about a YouTuber, talking about someone who brings you a little bit of joy, who entertains you, who definitely scratches that particular comedy itch, which, like, I've got that too, so I totally get that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I appreciate this, Andrew, and I'm going to link to all of those videos in the show notes.
Heck yeah.
So, y'all feel free to check it out. Or not, don't click the YouTube links. Like, you don't need to. It's fine. I love you. But I appreciate you, Andrew. This is honestly awesome, and I kind of want to scroll through and listen to some of the retro reviews of games that I've actually played. Because he actually talks about a bunch of Resident Evil games that I played, and other just Nintendo games that I played back in the day, and just older shit, and I'm down for it.
I highly recommend it. That's the recommendation I'm going to give for anybody. Like, all of these videos are basically, you can find them in one giant playlist and just, scroll through until you see the title of a video game that you like, and then see, what he has to say about it. It's probably awful. It probably involves, like, comparing something to headbutting a brontosaurus to death, or getting fucked in the ear with a sandpaper condom. That's a direct quote.
Yep, and he's gonna say the C word a lot, but that's okay. It's YouTube.
Indeed.
Forget it, Jake. It's YouTube.
Oh my god. That is a t-shirt right there, my friend.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Shall we move on?
Indeed,
We're about
we
the 40-minute
shall.
mark.
Indeed, we shall.
Oh god, this is gonna be such a long episode, and I love it. Okay, Andy, you brought some love. Now I'm here to drag us down to the depths of hate. So, as always, dear boy, I like to start with asking you a question, just a brief one, and then I'll get into the topic. So, Andy, dear boy, I want you to tell me, please, what is the best and or worst advice that you've ever received to increase your productivity? If you can give me one, the other, or both, like I'm good. If you can't think of either one, give me the weirdest one.
Sure. And I did have to think about this for a while, but I mean, real quickly, the best one I've heard is like the 20 on 5 off approach, where, you know, you focus for 15, 20 minutes and then give yourself a little 5-minute break. And, that worked out tremendously for me back in college. And I think that's a really good technique. The worst bit of advice I've gotten, or at least heard about, is trying to take your passion and turn it into a side hustle. I want to protect people's anonymity, but somebody very close to me was on the phone with their mother, and their mother is part of a multi-level marketing scheme where they sell jewelry. But of course, the way you really make money isn't by selling jewelry. It's by bringing other people on so that they sell jewelry. And this person...
I did Cutco once.
Yeah. This person was telling my friend, you do makeup and you love it so much and you're so great. You don't like what you can do is do your makeup and then put on the jewelry and take pictures talking about it, and you can sell it that way. And I just had to sit there and really grip my teeth at the idea of, let's take your passion. Let's take something you genuinely just enjoy doing for its own sake, which is makeup, and turn that into your way to make some money on the side. Yeah, that's not going to totally like kill your desire to do makeup ever again.
Sure. I remember I was just talking to Stephanie about this whole topic, and I remember her telling me that someone once told her that you should have one hobby that makes you happy, one hobby that keeps you fit, and one hobby that makes you money. And she heard that and she's like, if I have a full-time job, why the fuck do I want to make money off of my hobby? Like, that's just going to make me not want to do that hobby. That sucks. That's horrible.
Yeah, I have a full-time job that's directly related to that thing I'm passionate about. And you know what I don't do when I clock out is think about making film or movies. So,
just saying. I mean, Kevin Smith worked in a convenience store. Just saying.
Yeah.
We did a whole episode about it.
I know. He paved the way for me.
Oh, God. Don't work with Harvey Weinstein. Anyway, I appreciate you saying that. And for reference, my examples are kind of in similar veins. The best advice I ever got was to build systems for dealing with any tasks that take up time or mental energy. But they take up time, but they don't take up mental energy. Sorting emails is a good example. Like, just sitting there going through your inbox, going, deleting that, don't care about that. Oh, let me read that. If you take the time to set up your inbox rules ahead of time, you don't even see the messages that don't matter to you. So a little bit of upfront work there, you save yourself a lot of time and mental energy. Okay. That's just one example. That was good advice. That was legitimately useful. Worst advice that I've ever seen has been that you should always keep your office on you. You should always have your smartphone or your tablet or your laptop with you, so that whenever you are like waiting in line at a grocery store or you're at the DMV or something, you can get some work done while you have the spare 5 minutes. That is the worst productivity advice I've ever heard. I hate it. And whoever thought of that is suffering from dealing with the exact topic that I want to talk about today.
I'm all ears. Yeah.
All right. So my topic is hyperproductivity, specifically the fetishization of hyperproductivity. Andy, when you hear hyperproductivity, what does that like? When you hear that word and close your eyes, what do you picture when I say those words? Because I picture Alec Baldwin in 30 Rock, but
I picture one of those like 50s workplace orientation videos with the kind of music, and like everyone in those cartoon videos working at like fast forward speed.
Whoa. I hate it. Thank you. So this is kind of a broad topic. So I'm gonna give a little brief definition, but the idea of hyperproductivity, as I want to kind of examine it, is it's the notion that it is good, admirable, and even desirable to accomplish a high volume of tasks in a comparatively short amount of time. And this can manifest in careers. I think that's where a lot of us are going to encounter a lot of this thinking. But it can also manifest in creative work. We've just talked about that. Or even in home lives, particularly for people with families. Andy, neither of us have kids. You have a pet snake. And I have a haircut that I'm trying very hard to grow into something beautiful. I got a bigger laugh than I expected.
You're a funny man. You're a funny co-host.
Oh, thank you. So while I don't on the surface really have anything against just trying to be, more efficient with your day-to-day tasks or get a little bit more done, it's that constant hustle mentality that comes with fetishizing hyperproductivity that, at its most innocent, I think it's really, really unhealthy. And at its worst, I think it's like really dangerous. Have you ever heard of the concept of working lean, Andy? Does that phrase have any meaning to you? Because it's one that I only learned about in like a few, like in the last couple of years, and it pisses me off a lot, but I want to know if it's something you're familiar with.
I don't think I've ever heard it, but I can kind of draw a conclusion. Is that anything like Stay Hungry? Like,
not quite.
Okay.
So working lean is it's actually a corporate philosophy where you deliberately schedule your shift workers at slightly lower than like the optimal capacity for just getting all of the work done. Part of that is to kind of create a more frenetic workspace so that people are just generally higher energy. And, part of it is also to create kind of this idea of some scarcity amongst your employees so that the quote unquote hungriest will step up to fill those gaps. And by the way, the company also gets to save a little bit of money by staffing lower than they probably should.
Sure.
So it's a thing that has kind of been called out in a lot of labor activist circles for a large amount of time. But hyperproductivity and this fetishization of it is something that is really kind of some of the groundwork for this level of thinking in workspaces. I don't know how many times you've encountered, like, I feel like there might be maybe it's the bubble that I live in, Andy, and you can tell me if this is your experience as well, but I feel like once upon a time, probably around our childhood, I encountered a lot more instances of people bragging about how much they overwork themselves and talking about how the way to get ahead is to be, first one in, last one out. of the
Sure.
office, taking on a whole bunch of extra, etc., etc. Is that a thing you encountered still, or was that a part of your childhood more than it is your adulthood? I know your workplace has some bullshit going on about justifying yourself, so.
Yes. Yeah, and we can talk about that. But to answer your question, like, I feel like I kind of that phased itself out of my life, but that might have more to do with the fact that I really don't work with that many people my age anymore. Specifically at my company, I'm more often than not the absolute youngest person in the office, or even on a film shoot by a considerable margin. But I can remember instances in college when I was a theater major where it was like, okay, I'm going to give my whole Saturday to volunteer and go tech, and that will like show that I'm a really hard tech worker, and that'll get me points in that way. Or even just I've certainly heard first one in, last one out a lot, and I just keep coming back to like, yeah, stay hungry, prove you're gonna like be the most committed one, always ask for more assignments, always ask for some other work. I think about a coworker's brother-in-law who is a realtor, and this coworker, not necessarily bragging, but kind of talking up how like, yeah, my brother-in-law makes bank. He's also like on the phone every night until like midnight sometimes, just trying to like seal these deals. And that always just sounded like gross to me.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Some people will argue that's hyperproductivity done wrong. Like that's doing it with too many hours. But I would argue like, okay, I'm a believer in work smarter, not harder.
Sure.
Like, in general. But it doesn't change the fact that, and I don't know if this is a purely American thing or purely capitalist thing, but again, it is that constant hustle mentality. I was pissed earlier this week because I was working from home and I was going to be my day off, and somebody who I was, trying to get us to work with told me, hey, I know you guys are, I know you're not going to be in the office on this day, but it's the soonest I can send along this paperwork. Is that going to be a problem? And I was like, honestly, it shouldn't be. And the reason I said it shouldn't be was because I have a work iPhone. And I was like, I'm going to pull out my work iPhone and forward your email. All I have to do is I get the email, I open the phone, I hit like forward and send it where it needs to go. Because of that, I agreed to it. But I was pissed for needing to do that because I find my personal time, my not on the clock time, to be very sacred to me.
Sure.
I have told people before, like, I have coworkers who will straight up just be like, yeah, I clocked out, but I just need to finish a couple things and then I'm heading home. And I'm like, no, you clocked out. Go the fuck home. You're not getting overtime. Leave. Number one, labor laws. Number two, go the fuck home and have a personal life. For the love of God. No one's rewarding you. There's this idea that you're going to be rewarded for this hyper productivity, for this hyper hustle. Maybe hyper productivity is the wrong thing to zero in on. Maybe I should be talking about constant hustle, but I'm going to stick with hyper productivity because I already dug my hole. But
no, and I can find plenty of examples for hyper productivity. I mean, I know somebody who used to be a manager at a Taco Bell and would like routinely work between 50 and 60-hour weeks, just taking on as many shifts as she could. For really no reason other than just this sort of like, well, if I do it, it's gonna look good for me. This same person is now a teacher and has told me to my face that like, yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll clock out and then just, or not a teacher. It was some sort of administrative thing, and she was saying, yeah, sometimes I'll just clock out and then go home and then do another 3 hours worth of work. And I'm just like, why? Why do you do this? Yeah. And so just to bring up my point, even within my my own company. Like, yeah, I have a boss who, when video production gets slow, usually because it's the summer and no one's going to come to Orlando, it has been bandied about more than once. Okay, it costs $1,000 a day to keep the lights on, so everybody needs to let me know how you're going to justify the work for the day. And to the man's credit, he's never laid me off. He's never threatened to lay me off. He's never threatened to cut my hours. But he has asked multiple times, like, okay, how are you earning your paycheck today? At this same company, you know, we're still in the quarantine. We're still in the throes of COVID. Maybe by the time this episode is out, we won't be. Whether or not that's a good thing is a whole other conversation. But, you know, a lot of people are working from home. Everybody in my office except me is working from home. And I've noticed this phenomenon where they never stop answering emails, it seems like. You know, they're answering emails from 8 in the morning until 9 at night. And I very pointedly don't even look at my work emails if I am not on the clock by 9 to 5:30. And it's not because I'm the only one in the office. It's because I straight up refuse to do that work for you if I'm not getting paid.
Yeah. And that's the right thing to do. That's the legal thing to do. And I agree. And I want to segue away from like work just because I do think that in the creative and the home spheres, this also manifests. So I don't want it to seem like this is purely just a work thing. But Andy, you mentioned that you come home from your gig ostensibly in your industry, but you don't feel like doing your own creative work when you get home. When we're recording this, I just finished a 10-hour day with my day job, and I do this because I love it. I do this because it's like fucking fun as hell. And when we were creating the idea of this podcast, you originally thought maybe let's do it once a week. And I said, no, let's do it twice a month.
Right.
Because twice a month will be sustainable without being like just fucking way too much for us to deal with.
Yeah.
And I was right.
You were right. I've said it before. I'll say it again. There's a reason I'm damn impressed by Yahtzee and his weekly uploads.
Yeah, no, straight up. And like, you know, YouTube is a good spot there because like, okay, a YouTuber I follow, his name is Adam Neely. He does videos, he does a bunch of videos about bass playing. He's a bassist and composer kind of by trade and a gigging musician in New York. But he also does these YouTube videos on like music education and music history and music theory and bass playing and all manner of things. And he has frequently said like, he's been on YouTube for about 14 years. He started off by just like posting videos of him in his dorm room playing like Bach on his 7-string bass guitar.
Cool.
Yeah. Hella awesome. But that's how his YouTube channel started. And then at some point after he'd been doing that for like 3 years, he decided, okay, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to do one video a week. And every Monday he has a video. Some of the videos are like gig vlogs, which are he just took video from like various gigs he did, wrote up some commentary with like an idea of here's a thing you can learn from this particular gig. Some of them are these more in-depth things, but the point is, the dude has released a video every single week for like a decade and has said like, I'm going to be on vacation or I'm going to be on tour. So I've set up these like easier videos, these shorter videos, these Instagram Q&A videos where he just like goes on his Instagram page and is like, send me questions. And he'll just answer the questions on Instagram and then post it as a YouTube video. Like, some of his videos are high production. Some of them are very low production, but he consistently does them on top of being a gigging musician, which is a hustle. And I respect the shit out of that. And also, I know that wouldn't be sustainable for me in a creative context. One of my favorite things about my day job is that I have the mental space to then do podcasting, do music, do writing, And I set that time aside very specifically. Here is the hour. I just got done doing NaPoWriMo, which is National Poetry Writing Month. I wrote 30 poems in 30 days. And I did all of that by planning my time as best I could. I didn't write every day. Sometimes I wrote multiple poems in one day. But that was done in addition to things. It wasn't I have to hustle to get everything out. That was done as I need to do this sustainably and carefully and intelligently. I have never done NaNoWriMo, which is November's National Novel Writing Month, where you write a 50,000 word novel in 30 days. That's I think that's like 1,600 words a day. Never done that. That's not sustainable for me. I can write multiple poems in one day. I can't write thousands of words in a day. I just can't.
L. Ron Hubbard. We get it.
I am not L. Ron Hubbard. That is very well put. But also, I see people in my workspaces fetishizing that kind of hyper productivity. I've said this. I've talked about this constantly. People talk about how prolific Ray Bradbury was as a writer. But Ray Bradbury had his wife handling most of his life outside of writing. Ray Bradbury was able to write for 8 hours a day because his wife did all of the cooking, all of the cleaning, all of the housework, and also was his accountant and handled most of his business engagements. So all he had to worry about was writing. So we're going to fetishize Ray Bradbury's incredible creative output while ignoring the fact that Ray Bradbury didn't do that because he's better than any of us. He was able to do that because he was taken care of. He was privileged in that way. And that hyperproductivity mindset doesn't make room for that, I don't feel.
No, I agree. Make sense? Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense, man.
Yeah. And I mean, how many words have been spilt about how shitty it is that, Gwyneth Paltrow writes these articles about raising your kids while also doing 2 hours of yoga a day and eating the healthiest foods ever while she's got a fucking nutritionist, a personal trainer, and multiple nannies.
Stocking stuffer news, Gwyneth Paltrow released a candle that's supposed to smell like her vajayjay. And it's sold out immediately.
I hate to always bring it back to class privilege.
I was about to say, I'm not mad about it.
But it's there. If I want anyone to take anything away from this particular hate, it's that it's okay to want to be productive. It's okay to want to increase your productivity. In researching this, I read probably a dozen productivity hacks lists, and all of them are horrible, and I'm not linking to any of them. But if that's something that you want to do, to experiment with, to try, there's a million really useful things to do. And a lot of it's the same generic advice. Get up early. Make it so that you cut down on the major decisions you have to do. Make sure you try and get a little bit of physical activity each day. Take breaks throughout. Break big tasks into little, smaller, more manageable tasks. All these are very useful tips, and they all make sense, and they're wonderful. You're not a bad person for trying them out. Don't worry about being hyper productive.
Yeah. Take care of yourself above all else.
Yeah. How many people are starting side hustles in the quar? And I'm like, dude, it's okay to survive.
Well, and there's probably, I don't know if the number is greater or lesser than the amount of people who are yeah, I'm a creative writer by trade. It's really fucking hard to write during the quar because I'm freaking out about the world.
And it's the idea that more is more.
Yeah.
And more is not more. It's just not. I don't see what productivity is worth if it takes away from the rest of your life. I don't see what fetishizing it is worth if it means you're going to be taken advantage of by your employer, or if it means you blind yourself to the privileges that allow other people to be more productive, or if it just doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
So I don't have any deeper point than that. I just was thinking about okay, what's something I'm legitimately hating? I am legitimately hating all of this talk in the quar about people going, if you Now you have time. So if you don't finish that novel, or you don't write that musical, or you don't learn that new skill, or you don't get in shape, then that means that it wasn't that you lacked time, it was that you lacked commitment. And it's like, fuck you.
No, yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, Andy. Actually, I do know about you because we talk outside of this podcast. I don't just put you in a box and take you out when it's time to set up the microphones. I've been dealing with a lot of quarantine depression.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to survive. Fuck you that I haven't finished my novel while in the quar. Fuck you exactly. So, that is my point there. Any final thoughts before we move on to our question?
No, I think this is the right time to be talking about it. I know you said you just kind of decided what you wanted to rail against this week, and I think this was an appropriate time to do about it, you know? I mean, you're usually the fatalistic one, but like, no, tomorrow isn't promised to any of us. So is it really worth like doing that 3 hours off the clock, or even like deciding you're going to use your hobby to try and make you a little extra scratch? You know, I have started writing during the quar, but I'm not holding myself to any expectation, even to the point of finishing it. I'm just trying a thing that I haven't done since college because I feel this desire to, and that's enough.
I would love to read anything you write.
If and when that is possible, you'll be one of the first people I send it to.
Sounds good.
You want to get into our question, bud?
Yeah, should I read this one or you want to?
I know you found it, but I'm not. Go ahead. You go ahead and read it.
Okay, cool. So this one comes from relationships.txt. Once again, I'll link to it in our show notes. We'll get started. I guess this isn't a serious issue. It just bugs me. By the way, this is sent in by a 23-year-old female regarding her 23-year-old male boyfriend. I am 5'7". I've been to doctors recently and been measured at 5'7", sometimes 5'8", depending. My boyfriend claims to be 5'11". He is at least an inch or two shorter than me. My estimation would be between 5'6" and 5'7". We met in person, not on a dating app, so I know how tall he was from the get-go, and it's not an issue for me, and I've never presented it as an issue. All of my exes are also a spectrum of heights. He wanted to prove to me that he's 5'11", so we stood back to back in front of a mirror, but I stood straight and relaxed, and he tensed up his back and shoulders and stretched his neck as long as he could. His arms were stiff from standing so straight, and yes, standing like that, he did look a bit taller. But that's not a natural height, right? If you have to put in that much effort, I feel like that's not your accurate height. When we first started dating, he said he thought I was like 5'4" because he thinks he's 5'11". When I told him I was 5'7", his face dropped, but he's still adamant that he's 5'11". I think this is ridiculous. He brought up being 5'11" the other day, and also said he thought he had Marfan syndrome, which a 6'4" ex of mine actually has. I'm just incredulous. How on earth does he still think he's pushing 6 feet? Is there a way to bring this up in a way that isn't discrediting or hurtful, because it does bother me, and I don't see a reason to lie or be upset about being 5'7"? We have somebody with a bit of a shortness complex, and we have his partner who doesn't have a shortness complex. Does anything come to mind for you immediately as far as names are concerned?
Thumbellina and Tom Thumb.
Aww, I know a person or two that particular setup will make very happy. Okay, Thumbellina.
She's a funny little squirt.
Dealing with your boyfriend Tom Thumb, who for some reason thinks he's 5'11", despite the fact that he is several inches tall.
And real quick, right off the bat, for anyone who isn't aware, Marfan syndrome is a real thing, and it is a genetic disorder that like basically makes you super tall and spindly and like thin and elongated.
Okay. So, Andy, I read. Would you like to start?
Yeah. This is such a weird one because, like, I just think, who cares? Why does he care? I get why he cares. I get how, especially like shorter men, there tends to be a societal, like, Napoleon complex of the whole thing, which it sounds like is what your boyfriend has instead of Marfan syndrome.
You're funny.
God, I feel like this can just be as simple as, like, so you stood back to back in front of a mirror and he like tried to game the system. What you do is, and I feel like I feel like you could do this at even like a gym. You could have like a third party trainer or something do this if this is what it took, but you have somebody else measure the dude like in front of him. And the reason I bring up possibly a trainer or somebody is you have somebody who like keeps him from arching his heels up and straining his neck. And, you know, you get the guy's height on record and you put this indisputable, like, okay, you, me, and the witness are all here to agree that you are 5'7". And guess what? I still love you if you love him. Or, you know, he's your boyfriend. I'm assuming there's some vein of affection in there. This is just such a weird thing. I'm incredulous too, Thumbellina. Like, he's not lying for anything other than his own ego. And I guess maybe like really the most you can do is call him out on it and don't just let the lie go, but be like, it doesn't matter how tall you are to me. I didn't start dating you because I looked at you and went, I'm going to climb that like a tree. I don't know. That's kind of short and sweet and simple. I'll try to think of another thing, but what do you got, Alex?
I'm trying to think. Whenever I answer questions like these, I think my approach, Andy, is to try and like figure out either like maybe a route to the issue or an avenue that you maybe haven't thought of. And frankly, I mean, this just sounds like some toxic masculinity bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, we did a whole episode segment on toxic masculinity, which is a nice little advantage to having, 46 prior episodes. We've talked about almost everything. There's a Simpsons did it joke somewhere in here. Actually, you know what? The Simpsons did Bart needing to grow an inch so that he could play Fallout Boy in the Radioactive Man episode. So, what are you going to do? I feel like it kind of doesn't matter how much evidence you throw at him. Because you told him your height.
Sure.
And you say that his face dropped, but that he's still adamant that he's 5'11". I think my approach, Thumbellina, is to just spitball a few different strategies at you and see what, if anything, will work. Andy's idea of maybe finding like a neutral third party to do the measurement, that might not be a bad way to kind of address it. A personal trainer's good. A doctor's good. I'm almost tempted to be like, what does it say on his driver's license? But I think you self-declare at the DMV, so his driver's license probably says 5'11", which is hilarious. I mean, you could do that. You could do some cloyful mocking, maybe in the vein of like wearing heels around him a whole lot, and just kind of looking down on him, especially if you're comfortable wearing like longer heels, just to kind of put him in his place about that. But you're already an inch taller than him, and he's insisting that he is taller than you. So, I think accentuating the issue might be kind of hilarious.
It might be kind of hilarious. It might also, not knowing about the guy, it might exacerbate some unfortunate consequences, but
yeah, it's like, the question is like, you care, obviously, and I don't think this is a big enough deal that you're like you don't say that you're like thinking about dumping him over it or anything like that. He doesn't seem dangerous. He just seems like he's gaslit himself into thinking that he's a height that doesn't actually fucking matter. That's the other thing. Like, none of it really matters. He's just convinced himself that it matters. And I, like, there's also a part of me that wants to sit here and be like, hey, y'all should have a Tom Cruise movie marathon and be like, oh, look, he's your height. I say this as a man who's 5'6", and I'm like, oh, look, it's Tom Cruise. He's my height. Like, that's a legitimate joke I make for myself. Yeah, I feel like I have an instinct about this, and I don't know if it's productive, but I have an instinct that just, like, mocking him might be, like, not mocking him for the sake of just, like, pure comedy, like, not to be mean-spirited, but just to show that you don't respect this opinion. Because I'm a firm believer that if there's, like, just some dumbass bullshit that, like, even if it's your partner or even your friends or your family members, like, just some stuff that you just don't respect. Like, my father once told me that caffeine isn't actually a stimulant, like, it doesn't actually have an effect because it doesn't have an effect on him because he's been drinking coffee since he was off the breast. So, like, he can drink an entire thing of coffee and go straight to sleep. So he's like, caffeine doesn't actually do anything. And I've just been like, Dad, I don't respect that opinion. And I don't respect that opinion. I don't respect that statement. It's factually inaccurate. It's real dumb that you say it. And I'm not going to stop making fun of you for it. I am not going to stop making fun of you for that until you repent and recant. And to wit, I think every other visit that I go to Orlando and see my father, I crack a joke about him drinking coffee and be like, oh yeah, there's that thing that you say does nothing whatsoever. Remember when that happened? That was real stupid, Dad. Because I don't respect his opinion about that. So maybe that's a bad approach. And he hasn't actually recanted. He's just been like, shut up and stop talking. But it's funny to me, so
Well, so there you go. You got one way that's a little sweet and one way that's a little sour, Thumbellina. I mean,
it is the Sour Patch Kids of advice. And, like, if you're really Thumbellina, you could, like, dance with a Sour Patch Kid. Yeah. So
I'm kind of surprised more of our helpful advice sessions don't wind up like this. So either way, there's two ways you can play it. Maybe you do one and then the other. You make fun of him for pretending he's 5'11", and then you very sweetly or kind of tongue in cheekly go, and I still am into you anyway, you idiot. I
do like that approach.
Ways.
Like, yeah, like be reassuring. Try not to be mean-spirited, but it is legitimate. Like, this is legitimately stupid, and this is a bubble that he should have popped. Not because it's important for him to observe the objective reality of his height, but because it's bullshit that he puts any stock into it at all. Like, this bubble needs to be burst.
Yeah.
Just for him to advance as a human being.
And if you want to advance as a human being... that one I had to. That was too low hanging.
Oh God.
You can send your relationship questions in to us at lovehaterelationshippodcast@gmail.com, where we promise we'll read them.
Absolutely. That's it. You, Thumbellina, if you see this response, because I'm going to post it under relationships.txt, but like if you see this, you can totally do what I'm about to say. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or even TuneIn Radio. Hey, Mom. I think we got that thing fixed. You said you were caught up on the podcast, so appreciate you.
Yay.
We would also love it, absolutely adore it, Thumbellina and all others, if you reviewed us on any or all of those. And hey, Tom Thumb, if you're listening to this, I'm going to go ahead and challenge you once we're out of the quar. Come down to North Carolina, we'll meet up, we'll stand shoulder to shoulder, and we'll be the same height, because we're both 5'6". We're both Tom Cruise sized. We're also Bruno Mars sized. And you, Tom Thumb, you, Thumbellina, and everyone else out there, all of you can tweet us at LHRpod, that's LHRPOD with your questions, and follow us there to keep up with new episodes.
That's right. You can follow me, Andy Boel, at JovoCop2113 on Twitter, or you can listen to my other podcast, Cult Fiction, where we talk about movies and not just crappy Disney remake ones, on all of those venues Alex just said.
I don't think like any of those Disney remakes qualify as cult.
No, they don't, which is why we're not talking about them.
No. Sure, absolutely. And I'm at @A_X_ on Twitter and Instagram and, you know what the fuck, TikTok as well. Thanks for listening, y'all. As always, please tell your enemies.